You are the Holy Grail, the Magdalene. Woman, no need to search any longer. The priestess of wealth.
Welcome to the Woman Arising podcast, hosted by Kathy Hartenstein and Zephy Devi, where we elevate and celebrate inspiring women on the rise. In this podcast, we talk to women from all walks of life about their soul's journey, the obstacles they overcame, and how they embody their feminine power. We hope to elevate women's place in the world, showcase their contributions, and provide inspiration for all women to rise to their fullest potential. Today, our guest is Suzanne Scurlock, one of the world's leading authorities on conscious awareness and its transformational impact on the healing process. For more than 30 years, she has empowered people with practical how-to tools to listen to their body's innate wisdom, access their inner aliveness, and experience more joy. After decades of perfecting her methods, Suzanne created the Healing from the Core method and a comprehensive training curriculum. Known for her honest, grounded, and nurturing manner, Suzanne is adept at weaving together body, mind, spirit, and emotions to create a unique environment that encourages profound healing. She is a sought-after international speaker and the author of 2 acclaimed books. Welcome, Suzanne. It is our true pleasure to have you here today, as you've done so much through your work to empower women.
Thank you, Kathy.
It's amazing to have you. Thank you for being able to, be with us today, because Women Arising is on the rising, I guess. And we're here to help women all over the world. So my first question is, it is about Women Arising. So when you get that question, what Women Arising means to you, what do you feel? What is the feelings that come through with just the word Women Arising?
For me, the feeling is a feeling that starts in my pelvis, my belly, and it kind of rolls through. And it is the sense of women in their full power, hearts, guts, pelvises, our bones, our legs and feet, with our brains working on all channels, arising in the world and bringing back in at a deeper level the women's ability to guide and create and do what needs to be done in the world today in terms of peace and thriving and humankind.
That's really amazing. And how does that resonate in your personal journey for you?
Mhm. So, one of the things I will say, 2 things. I've had my share of challenges throughout my life as a woman, and I write about them in Full Body Presence and Reclaiming Your Body. And having those, I also had 2 parents who definitely asked me, told me, urged me to stand on their shoulders, and as a woman, to take my power and move out into the world in whatever way I could. And Kathy actually knows my mom. She's still around at 95, and she's a force of nature. So there's a way in which I feel like I came from that foundation in my childhood, in my genetics. And then as life went on, there were all different kinds of challenges. And I had, I was strangled when I was 17 and almost died. I was in a terrible car accident that left me with chronic pain in 1980. I've had various and sundry things across the years that have been very, very challenging. And I have not let them hold me down, if you will.
That's what Women Arising is about. Nothing to held us down. Absolutely. Thank you for that.
I absolutely love that. And I love, even when you started talking about women rising, how you feel that in, so that pelvic core. And I know you do a lot of work there as well. But I do think that's sort of a lot of times that is a big power center for us as women and how we arise. And the idea of arising, coming out of these obstacles and these challenges, but also sort of knowing from, it sounds like, a young age, that sense of power in yourself. And I think that that's a really important perspective on that term, because I think a lot of women would relate to that. I know we started talking about this, but I'd love to hear a little bit about your life's journey and how you got to where you are today, how you discovered some of the things that you're passionate about, how, as a woman, you sort of carved your own path in a lot of ways.
Mhm. Well, I have to say, it actually started when I was 13 years old. My best friend moved to Paris with her parents. And I said to my parents, I want to go visit Kathy in Paris. And they said, well, you earn half of the ticket and we'll pay the other half. And by
Hmm.
golly, I babysat for an entire winter, 50 cents an hour. And I did get to half of the plane ticket and got to go to Paris and then to visit my aunt and uncle in London. And it was amazing because what it said to me is, you can do anything. You put your mind to it, you can do anything. Don't let anything stop you, even though it's challenging, even though it's a lot of hard work. Do not let anything stop you. So that was like a little teeny thing that happened early on, but it said to me, don't let circumstances slow you down. They may be challenging, but don't let them slow you down. So then let's take the circumstance that happened when I was 17, where I was strangled. It was actually, I was strangled by someone who was a good friend. I considered him like an older brother to me. He was crashing on amphetamines, which I didn't know at the time, which can make people violent out of with no logic. But one of the things that hit me in that event, which occurred over, I was in the car with him talking, and we were sharing and all kinds of things. But what was happening is I could feel in my gut that something was off about what was going on between the two of us. I could not have told you what it was, but there was just this low level of get out. This is not right. Something isn't right. Something isn't right. And at the time, I let my left brain talk me out of it. I was a good girl. He was my friend. He appeared to be in distress. He needed me to listen to him. I couldn't be impolite. All the things that we tell ourselves as women about why we can't stand in our own power. Well, I did it that night and I almost died because of it. Because I turned to look out the window for a moment and boom, his hands were around my throat and I was out cold. I mean, he was once it began, he was absolutely terrified by what had occurred, thank God, and he was plastered against the other car door when I came to. But it was fascinating because after all of that, and it took years for me to heal the emotional and physical betrayal trauma of it, I began to recognize that my gut knew something. My gut knew that something was really off with him. No matter who he was to me, no matter what was, something was really off. And let me tell you, I never, never, ever didn't listen to my gut after that. I always trusted it. Always trusted it. And I got to tell you, it probably kept me out of a couple of date rape situations in college because I felt like something was really a little off. And then I would make an excuse and leave, and then discover later that this person was known for taking advantage of the women he was dating. So that was my very first veering into the wisdom of the body. And the gut is a primal level of instinctual knowing for us that many of us as women, we get trained out of it. We second guess what our gut is telling us, which is what I did that night. So the gut holds this level of knowing. Then the next thing that begins to occur is we as women are really given permission in most cases to be in our hearts. We are. Men, not so much. Tender-hearted men, traditionally haven't had, in American culture, haven't had as good a time. But women were allowed to be in our hearts. But we're not really taught to connect the wisdom of our hearts, our inspiration, to our gut as to whether that inspiration is really a good idea or not. Um, and then I began, when I had my daughter, my first child, I had a lot of damage to my pelvis in her delivery. And so I began to work with the process of healing my pelvis. And in doing that, as I was reclaiming my own pelvic energy, whoa, was it suddenly I began to realize, number one, for the couple of years that I was limping along, how hard it is to run on willpower rather than that natural engine that should be there for us as women. And when it did return, how much energy I had available to me to do what I needed to do in the world and to take my work. I was a craniosacral therapy instructor at the time. So I was already working with the energy of the body and the healing process. But these were different things that I was noticing and finding. And I was fascinated by it. Now, we can talk for a minute because women are basically taught not to be in their pelvises or to use their pelvis as a weapon, as a manipulative tool, one or the other there. I don't work really well with women who use it as a manipulative tool. It's not something I ever did or want to do. But teaching women who are not in their pelvises, who have been trained out of it. My dad was a Baptist minister. I grew up on the front pew. I didn't live anywhere below my waist. Baptists just don't. Lots of traditions we're really locked out of our pelvises. It's an engine. It's the engine of the body, and the powers that be want control of it. So, I mean, and this is something we're seeing in our American culture today. It's trying to grab back the capacity for women to have control over what goes on in their pelvises. So these things are all fascinating to me. And as I began to, because I was a teacher, I began to look at how can I teach this information to other people? And then with all my meditation practices, I began to add the bones, the deep recesses of who we are, the inner sanctum, how that helps things calm down and clarify. Added the legs and feet for putting things into action and metabolizing information. And then, of course, the good old prefrontal cortex beginning to open up and be able to strategize and make maps out of all the wisdom that the body is giving the brain. So I have loved putting together the healing from the core work and these 6 wisdom areas to help people embody more deeply within and stay grounded. And Zephy, I loved your grounding in the beginning before we began to record. It was lovely. And it's something that a lot of our culture forgets. We're
Yeah,
a very heady culture, but that heady culture doesn't recognize that there's much going on from here down.
exactly. I love grounding. I think that's the best way for us to be. And as women, we have to be grounded because that's when we start to feel who we are and understand our bodies and understand not just our bodies, also our spiritual self, because that
Right.
comes through the grounding. Otherwise, it stops like right here, as you said. It doesn't go any further down. So how can we digest all that? So that's amazing. Thank you. Me and you are connecting in that level.
Yes, absolutely,
And
absolutely.
that too. Yeah. Yeah. So
No, definitely. And I think something that you said that I thought was really interesting in terms of the work that you developed specifically was the wisdom centers. And I like that we have this body wisdom and that there's so much information in our bodies and that as women in particular there are incredible layers of that wisdom and how because we create life. We are so in tuned with our bodies in a different way altogether. And so with that thought in mind, I'd love to hear a little bit about, you talked some about the obstacles that you overcame, which were really intense, but the beauty that they led to is fantastic. But, are some of the things that sort of shaped and defined you and the wisdom that you got from some of these experiences?
Hmm. So I would say that number one, the wisdom I got from that strangulation experience at 17 was that my gut had a lot to tell me and that I needed to listen. From the pelvic floor injuries with my first delivery, what I got was how hard it is to be vitally engaged in life without your pelvis because it was really offline for a couple years while I was healing it and working to strengthen it. So the pelvis is a vital part of who we are as women. Now this is something, but it's a very taboo subject in our culture. Hello, yeah, people can say, oh, the pelvis is a very powerful area. It is, and it needs to be honored and it needs to be connected to everything else. Pelvic energy, the engine of the body, running amok, like running just on its own, if it were compartmentalized, can do harm in the world. You're seeing it now. War is a really clear um, way that we see pelvic energy without any heart, without any without having the wisdom of the bones, without the gut, without the brain thinking, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? Why is this genocide happening right now? So there's many, many things that our wisdom areas show us. And as a craniosacral therapist and an instructor of craniosacral therapy, I was working with people's healing processes all the time. And as I was working with them, I began to recognize that when people were lacking embodiment in these different areas, be it your bones, your heart, your gut, your pelvis, that when we were lacking in it, there were some really distinct handicaps that those people had because they couldn't ground. They were not doing well within their legs and feet. They weren't doing so well in their pelvis. And they really weren't doing well with trusting their gut. So, and those kinds of people spin in circles. I just had a conversation with a very dear friend last night, and I have known him for many, many years. Highly intelligent person. And he keeps second guessing his gut and heading out in all these directions that make no earthly sense at all. And when I pointed out to him, he goes, "Oh, I think you're right." But because he's not embodied there on a regular basis, it's hard for him to get the signals from the body, giving him the wisdom that he needs in order to move forward with a very clear sense of integrity for himself as a soul. And we're talking at a soul level here. The heart, the heart shows us the inspiration for what we are to do at a soul level.
Mhm.
And when people are struggling with that, first thing I do is try to help them drop back into their heart, into their deep heart, front of the heart, and embody there. Do whatever healing we have to do to get the impediments out of the way so that they can be deeply in their own heart. And when they're there, and when they can really drop all the way to their backbone, they begin to see and feel and sense what is theirs to do at a soul level. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful to watch. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
amazing. As you were talking about being grounded and being in your pelvic and being in in your feet and in your legs. Have you noticed? Sorry, that's a question that is not part of our. But have you noticed that people tiptoe now? A lot of younger generation is tiptoeing.
Mhm.
And I'm seeing that more and more and more as I'm traveling. And I
Right.
think that's part of it. They're just not in their bodies. They're not, really putting their foot down and
Right.
stepping or in their energy. So your work is very amazing. We can get, these people to really start grounding in because that's the way you manifest.
It's absolutely the way you manifest, and without it, it's very difficult. One of my dear friends growing up, very wonderful creative woman, and her mother was even more creative than my friend. And when she went into her mother's home in her studio after her mom died, her mom had a bipolar disorder, so she was manic a lot of the time, and she was an amazing artist, and she would start 35, 40, 50 different projects. And my friend said she went into her studio, and here were these stacks of all these different projects that had been started and never completed. There were, she was a good artist, so there were a few things that got completed, but my friend was amazed and appalled in a way at how her creative juices had never come to full manifestation because she wasn't grounded. She did not know how to drop into her gut, her pelvis, her feet and legs. She was just
Yeah.
here, going all the time. And that, my friend, is really hard because it says that you can start off on things that really sound like a great idea, but maybe it's not the right time in your life to start on that one, or maybe you need to slow it down and finish this one before you get to that. So there are many different things that the gut and the pelvis will tell the heart if it's listening. Yeah, let's ground this deep inspiration, this soul's inspiration, and make it really happen. Yeah.
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 I really relate to that because I think a lot of times when you have that creative energy, like which I do in my life as well, it can be, up here and very intense and you want to kind of be immersed in it. But if you aren't grounded, it is really hard to sometimes be fully present with it. And like you said, manifest your creation. And finding that balance is is something really important, but not everybody really knows how to do that or has those tools.
A lot of artists that create a ton of stuff, and they may not organize it that well, but it's all there. They've really created it. You know, your mom is one of those people, right? And you are too. I mean, when you look at what you've created, it's amazing. And if you can add your gut, you can add your strategizing brain, you can add your pelvis and your bones to it, then suddenly you're harnessing that deep inspiration for your soul level and moving it in a direction that's going to be able to manifest fully. Fully. Yeah. I have to say, I could not do what I do without a really good follow-up staff, because I do get ideas going and think about them and integrate with other people. And so it's not that I have to do it all, but I have figured out how to how to support myself so that
Yeah.
I can do what I do. Yeah.
And it's just having that balance of those two energies and really being able to have all of that wonderful creative energy and then also be able to ground and feel connected to yourself. um, is great practice. I have the great fortune of knowing you for many years now, Suzanne, and you are a woman I really admire because you are visionary and you have a lot of confidence to sort of pursue your passions and make them happen. But I am curious if throughout your journey you ever felt marginalized as a woman, and if you did, like how you dealt with it, or if you didn't experience that when you saw that in the world, kind of how you experienced something like that.
Do you know, I have to say, because of my family growing up, I and because of the realms that I stepped into professionally, I never felt marginalized as a woman. And I will say that I was in a marriage for 32 years where it was not a good match. He is a good man, but it was not a good match. And there were a lot of years where I felt marginalized as I was trying to make the marriage work. He was kind of marginalizing me, and I didn't actually discover this until after I had walked away. But I had a taste of it there, and what I think a lot of other women do actually come up against. Um, the interesting piece is that I went into uh, real estate when I was first out of college for 7 years. Now, let me tell you, that's not male or female. It does not matter. It's how well you do your work. And so, again, this was something that was very empowering for me. I could make as much money as I was willing to work hard. The same thing happened when I got to the Upledger Institute and began to teach craniosacral therapy. There were more women instructors than there were men. And even though the person at the top was male, everybody underneath him was female. So it was very much you're a mother, you're a woman, you can do this. So I feel as though that was not a lesson I had to learn this time around. And yet I have helped hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of women who are going through experiences where they have been marginalized. And how do you step beyond that? How do you get your ground? How do you get your bones? How do you get absolutely empowered so that you can use your creativity to move beyond it, so you can figure out what alliances to make, so you can step through something where you are up against something that's hard, and how to stay centered and solid so that who you are doesn't waver in the face of the challenges that are naturally here for us in life. Yeah, yeah.
But that's great. And also, you said so though that you felt a little bit of that with your husband.
Mhm.
Yes. And how did that make you feel? And through that, would you able to discover your feminine power, like through that process that you went with
You know,
him?
yeah. And I think what it gave me was it gave me the energy to fight back. Like, in other words, I felt it and I knew it wasn't right. And and no matter what I did, it wasn't going to work exactly the way that a good marriage should. So that kind of tipped me off. But but it taught me, because I did have a good sense of self-esteem. It taught me to stand strong. And across the course of those 32 years, I learned how to fight fair. I learned how to speak up for myself. I learned how to stay grounded. I learned how to step into my own power and not let my husband drag me into whatever was going on for him. So there were many, many things I learned, and I don't regret those 32 years at all. And and it taught me all those skills, which I've taken now into my current relationship, which is a very, very different relationship. And occasionally he'll look at my new guy, he'll look at me and say, "How do you know how to have these difficult conversations?" Because we've had to have many different conversations. And I said, "Well, I have 32 years of being at relationship school and just hammering it out for myself." I think it helps that my husband was a psychologist. So I was being the things that were being thrown at me were very sophisticated. And the gaslighting that was happening was pretty sophisticated. And I really had to become aware of how it was happening, what was happening, all of that, and respond in a way that wasn't just punching back, but was actually naming what was going on, learning how to say, "This is what's happening right now. This isn't okay with me. I won't tolerate that. What do we need to do next?" All of these things I learned how to do in that circumstance. And in the end, this is true of all different, whether it's work or marriage. There was a moment where I went, you know what? I'm never going to get my needs met here. Never. In fact, I'm probably not even being seen. And at that point I went, I'm done. And I walked out. And I think that that was very important and empowering for me to do. Yeah. Yeah.
Would you say that that is the moment that you discover your feminine power and how that made you feel who you truly are as a woman when you walked out or doing it,
You know,
during that?
I think that, Zephy, I will have to say that I did it in stages because I was walking away from a 32-year marriage. We owned a home together. All of that. So the first thing I did was I said, okay, I need space. Back off. Move out of the bedroom. Then it was move out of the closet. Get your closet out of here. Get your clothes in the other bedroom. Okay, don't use this bathroom. I need that space. And then it was interesting because I had a discussion with one of my friends, and she looked at me and she said, "Do you think you're being kind to him by doing this in pieces?" And I went, "Oh, yeah." And she went, "No, no, no, no. Just tell him. You're not going to go back, are you?" I said, "No, I have no intention." She was, "Tell him that." And I did, and then everything began and it was fascinating. Fascinating. This is the cool part. Everything from that point forward, doors flew open, flew open, so that everything that needed to happen for me to be able to do what I needed to do with my work, with my world, with the relationship, all just opened, 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 opened. And it was fascinating to watch it occur. It wasn't all easy. There were some times I had to put my feet down and stand strong and really stand strong. But I did it in such a way that he didn't have a choice. This was going to happen, and he could do it with integrity or not, but it was going to happen. And that's Zeffie, I think yes, that whole process, and it went from January of 2018 to about June of 2018, and then by then it was just done. Whoop. And we were divorced by September of that year. And I was stepping out into a whole new world of who am I as a woman? Yeah, who am I? I knew who I was professionally. I knew who I was as a mother. I knew who I was as a daughter or a sister, but I didn't know who I was as a partner. And the last 6 years have been about discovering that. So that's important. Yeah,
Yeah,
all of that
I
is.
agree. I agree. And a lot of women go through what you've been through because they don't know how to get out of a marriage because of situations or background or, things like for me, for example, Indian women, it's very difficult to get out of a marriage.
Right,
So,
right,
and culture, not just Indian women, but a lot of women in the world of culture, it's very difficult for them to get out up to this day.
right.
So
Yep.
and so what it would be an advice for you to is it the advice for them? How would they be able to get out of a marriage that don't feel comfortable? Of course, listening to their guts is very important, but what other advice can you give on that?
I would say, see, I came from a culture where nobody divorced. No one
There
in my family divorced. That was
you
it.
go.
And
Yeah.
so even though I'm a white-skinned woman with an education, basically it was you work it out. You
Mm.
married him, you work it out. And I think culturally women get that message over and over again, much more than men do. And so one of the things that I think is empowering for women is to recognize what they can have and then to learn how to stand strong within themselves, get grounded, heart centered, gut centered, pelvis strong in their backbones, and get very clear about what they want. It took me years of asking myself, well, because I'd been, in a sense, and again, this is not a, I'm not denigrating my ex husband because he's not a bad person, but I was being fed dribbles of what I actually needed, these little teeny drips of, and, and I, when I finally went, oh, I deserve to be loved. I
Mhm.
deserve to be someone who adores with someone who adores me. I deserve to be someone who will talk things out with me, who will see me as an equal and respect me. And when all of that became clear, then the gauge by which I could measure whether or not the marriage was working, got really crystal clear, really crystal clear. That not able to really connect with me intimately, not able to speak with me about issues truthfully, not able to really respect what I do or how I do it, not able to very much be himself even in a marriage with a woman who's powerful. I'm a powerful woman. It is not easy for the average guy to be in a relationship with a powerful woman because it threatens them. It threatens them. So one of the things that I looked for in my current relationship is a man who was very comfortable with that. And I think I may have found him. So we'll see. It's doing the test of time now. But I would say to women, look at what you want in life. Do you want to be happy? You deserve to be happy. Do you want someone who truly loves you deeply? There is that person out there, man, woman, doesn't matter. There is someone out there that is going to love you fully and deeply. Are you being met at that primal physical level in your relationship? If you're not, just know that that's available too. And if you're not getting it now, you can get it in a relationship. And from there, you start to say, okay, what do I need to do? Most women, if you're talking about women of culture, like of uh, who are women who have not traditionally held jobs or been out of the home, you're going to need to stand and learn how to do that for yourself. One of the things I did in my marriage was I actually waited until it was physically and financially I was capable of stepping out of the marriage without doing any harm to my work and the what I do for a living. That I could afford to stay where I lived, that I could afford to do what needed to be done. It was not going to cause me any um, problems on that level. And yet, many women do have to move somewhere smaller, put up with a lot of stuff. There's been a lot that has been written about this in the last 10 years. There's a Substack that I read, and I've lost her name right now, but she just wrote a book that's on the New York Times bestseller list called This American Ex-Wife. And it is a great, great story about her waking up. She's in her 40s, early 50s, but waking up and going, "What the what have I been putting up with?" And this woman, God, I wish I could Liz something. It's lost me right now. It is. It's actually a really great story. This American Ex-Wife is what it's called.
That sounds like a great book. That sounds like a
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about your divine feminine and what it um how would you cultivate your divine feminine and how can you honor your
Mm,
divine feminine, of course, in your personal and also in your professional life?
right. So my divine feminine, one of the things I do because I'm a soul that teaches. I love teaching. So part of my divine feminine is to teach other women about their divine feminine. That's how my Healing the Pelvic Core workshop came about. Was I wanted other women to be able to heal from the things that had crippled them, that had slowed them down, that had locked them in a box at a certain level. And so my divine feminine, I look at self-care. Do you know I take care of myself? One of the things my current guy said to me a couple weeks ago, he goes, "I'm watching you. You really take good care of yourself." And I said, "Is that a compliment?" He said, "Absolutely. Absolutely. You you take care of what you need in terms of supplements. You take care of what you need in terms of exercise. You take care of what you need in terms of eating, what you eat. And you take care of what you need in terms of body work and healing work. Because I've had a fair amount of trauma across the course of my life. So getting regular body work is a big part of what keeps me healthy. So the divine feminine is a soul part that says, you're worth taking care of, and let's get to it. Let's make it an absolute necessity. This is not a luxury. It's a necessity. Do I get the exercise I need? Am I eating in a way that's really healthy for me? Am I taking what I need supplementally to keep my system operating at its best? Do I get the body work? There's so many different things and friendships. Oh my gosh, women's friendships are huge. Mrs. Kathy, where you and I have connected, um, as probably the only people under 75 in Sedona. We've had so much fun together, but also because you're a very entrepreneurial, creative woman who is in her power. And so it's fun to share that with other sisters. There's another thing that I will say, that for a truly, truly divine, feminine, spirited woman, they will do everything they can to lift up other women. There's no jealousy. There is no envy. It's, I l- love what you're doing. How can I help you bring it forward? And I'm watching what you all are doing here with Women Arising. And I think that's part of this. You clearly have very powerful divine feminines because you're doing this work that is beautiful for women to get that they have a capacity to do this. So one of the basics though that I see is that I make sure I'm grounded and full every day. My inner energy reservoir has to be full and stay full. I'm not the nicest person in the world when I'm tired. Kathy, you and I were talking about that when I was last there. It's like you were saying something about being crabby with your mom. I went, "Oh, I am terrible to my mom." And I told you a story about crabbing at her, and I was exhausted. So staying energetically full and figuring out when you're not and refilling is huge for the divine feminine, because our oasis that we create from our divine feminine requires that we take care of ourselves first in order to continue to be that oasis for the people we love and care about.
I
Yeah.
really
Yep.
love that. And I feel like that sense of um, self-care, sometimes we put ourselves on the back burner, unfortunately, right? Because we feel
Yeah.
all these commitments or obligations or we overcommit because we're passionate about so many different things. And then somewhere along the line, we realize we're running on empty or we don't have that capacity. And that to really find that practice. And Zephy actually has amazing, amazing practices that she does daily to fill that chalice, so to speak, of that source. And I actually learned a lot from Zephy about that when we started. But I think building that daily practice, whatever it is that does fill you up, that sense of care is vital, and that if you look at the divine feminine and the concept of the feminine energy as being a nourisher, right? That we nourish, that we also need to nourish it and to be nourished and to have that nourishing flowing both directions.
Right.
It's really important as
Well,
well.
and nourishment and creativity. Who we are as women, I mean, we have an entire creative energy field, and location in our body that can create new life, but also lots and lots of new things, new projects, and I think the longer we look at this process and the more women that are arising, we're seeing that they are often the best bank managers. They're the best investors. They are the best at all different arenas that we would not normally have thought about. So creativity as well as nourishing is who we are. But overall, we nourish the world. It's
Yeah.
it is who we are to be the basket holders, but we can also be the person holding the handle on that basket and walking it through the market at the same time. Yeah,
Love
yeah. So
that.
this yeah, this is
With
important.
that in mind, I'd love to kind of ask our last question, which is like, as you're reflecting on your life's journey, and we talked about some of the lessons and the insights that you learned. But what do you think it's like most essential for women to embrace as they navigate their own paths to kind of elevate this world to where we want it to be, where women are rising? Like, what's the advice like you wish somebody maybe had given you as a young woman?
Mm, mm. The word trust pops into my head. Um, all the stuff we've just talked about that if you put it in place, you have practices, you have spiritual practices, you have physical practices, you have emotional practices that ground you and keep your oasis full, or you call it the chalice. I love that. So, what I want to say is now, when you've done that, the next thing you need to do is not only continue to do these things, but trust that by making a commitment to your divine feminine and by putting it out there, that the universe is hearing you and is going to begin to conspire on your behalf to have things work out. And I can tell you again and again and again, um, older women, my mentors, put their arms around me at different points in time and said, trust the path that you're on. Trust that you have what you need. Trust that once you've made this commitment and you're true to yourself and to your soul, who you are, the universe is going to conspire on your behalf to help you create it. And it has to do with listening always within and listening to the soul level of who you are and trusting what shows up. That's really, I would say, my last takeaway here.
I really needed to hear that today. So thank you. That's really lovely. And Zeffy says that to me a lot too. So I really do appreciate that. And if people wanted to get in touch with you and connect with you, and if you've got anything that you want to invite people to do in the next, few months, how would they do that? And what would you like them to connect with you about?
Okay. So they can go to probably the best thing would be to go to my website, which is healingfromthecore.com. It's on the screen back there, healingfromthecore.com. I have many things that are online, many on demand courses. The pandemic was kind to me in that I got the time and had the support to film everything I've ever taught. And it is online on my website and available to people on demand, should you decide to go in that direction. And I have lots and lots and lots to teach. I also teach craniosacral therapy still for the Upledger Institute, and I teach mostly third level classes, somato-emotional release, and then I mentor advanced students. So upledger.com can show you where I'm teaching and when in those SER levels of workshops. And I don't know, I really if people want to reach out to me, yeah, from my website, there's actually a link that you can do that, and I'll email back and have a chat with you. So there's also a private practice there that you can get connected to.
That's
Yeah.
great. What wonderful
Mm.
things you're doing, Suzanne. And it was just so delightful to have this conversation with you today and some really great reminders about how to stay grounded in our bodies, how to really trust our gut, trust ourselves, and live inside that divine feminine power. So we are absolutely thrilled that you chose us to be a guest on our podcast. And thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you
you so
so
much for having me. This has been wonderful. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. The same for us too.
Thank you for tuning in to Woman Arising. where we celebrate the resilience, wisdom, and power of women on the rise. Remember, when women rise, we all rise. If you're ready to embark on your journey of empowerment, sign up for our mailing list at womenarising.com and join our community of strong, inspiring women. To connect with Zephy Devi and ignite your inner fire, visit zephydevi.com and sign up to get your free tantric meditation. Let Zephy illuminate your path, helping you discover the magic and power that reside within you. To connect with Kathy Hartenstein and claim your spectacularness, visit createmorebliss.com and sign up for a free 30-minute consult call where she can help you break through your emotional blocks to success. Let Kathy be your guide on this journey of self-discovery and empowerment. Thank you for being a part of the Women Arising community. Together, let's continue to uplift, inspire, and empower women everywhere. Until next time, keep rising, keep shining, and keep embracing the divine feminine power that resides within you.
You are the Holy Grail, the Magdalene. Woman, no need to search any longer.